Wow, the 6 Invitational really has not disappointed. There's been so many games, literally every single day, that have been bangers, so many upsets, and I'm just so glad that I've managed to tune in and watch it all. However, we did see some players really shine and be a cut above the rest of the competition. So in this video, I thought I'd mention 3 people that I think really were stood up and counted for and helped drag their team over the line and get themselves into those playoff positions. There were some big players who were expected to perform, but then there were quite a few players that might have gone under the radar, whether it be because they're new players or just because of the form they've been in as of recent, that really were the difference maker for their team when it came to their various different matchups. If you're going to enjoy the video, drop it a like. If you enjoyed the content I've been making on my channel, then feel free to drop a subscribe as well, as it helps the channel grow. And if you've got any friends that you think will enjoy this content, then feel free to share it too. So with all that said, let's get into it. Number 1, and we had to start with the big man himself, JoyStiCK from Team Empire. After a frustrating start in stage 1 for JoyStiCK, where he mostly played on support, he definitely showed that he had a point to prove coming into this competition. And in Team Empire's first 2 games of the tournament, they took 2 big wins against 2 of the favourites to take the whole competition in the likes of BDS and Team Liquid. It was really nice to see Empire commit to having him on a fragging flex role, and he really shined. They definitely set the tone of this competition, as in their first game against Team Liquid, he was able to outshine players like Beaulo and Nesk, but it was their game against BDS where he dropped a crazy 17-8 performance to win it for them 8-7 that impressed me the most. In both games they played Clubhouse, and he was stamping out attacks on Frost in Master Bedroom, with 2 big plays against both teams, overcoming 2 of their hardest matchups of the group stage. And in their next game, they went on to play Alamau and the boys on Team 1, and again he stepped up massively. Take a play like this for example, showing why he's a top fragger, but also why his game sense made him so valuable as a support player for the last 12 months. They went on to close out Team 1 7-4, and with that they had a flawless 3-0 on their first day at SI, surprising most people and being the only team to do so. And on their second day against DZ up against Match Point, he pulled off one of the best plays I think I've ever seen in pro competition. Check this out, he's just built differently.
JR check the correct side. There's going to be a bit of a distraction here, and that's JoyStiCK finding one. As elsewhere, Dan has fallen. JoyStiCK good for another kill, and sees a 3rd player. Looks for yet another player. Dark Zero, all trying to fight JoyStiCK, but the Russian Cyborg does not let up. He doesn't give DZ anything. Scyther to support as well. Both players on double digits. The Yokais from Always also helping out these players. JoyStiCK's gonna go for a jog. The rotation outside is perfect. No! Make that work! JoyStiCK! You are a monster!
One of the most impressive things about JoyStiCK's performances was his consistency. Not many players in the tournament can say that on a high pressure role like Entry and Rome, they were able to shine against both the big teams and the smaller ones. JoyStiCK did this and looked unfazed by any team with any regional playstyle, putting the team on his back in multiple games, and after their FaZe game, solidifying himself as the first person across any team in the tournament to hit 100 kills. And you can see why, he just seemed unkillable sometimes, and we all know as a player on the wrong end of that how frustrating that can be. I've said a few times in stage 1 that Empire seemed to be struggling with fragging power, and that they would have much more success in stage 1 if they had that aggressive player who is one of the best fraggers in the world and let them off the leash. And I'm glad that they let JoyStiCK be that player, as we know from over the years what he's capable of, and showing it on the biggest stage of the year is very impressive. Number 2, Cameraman from FaZe, who had one of the more well-rounded performances out of any player in the group stage. I think what impressed me most about Cameraman's performance was how many different things he needed to juggle for his team. Whether that be frags, plants, or shot calling as the IGL, he did all 3 to a great standard. We saw a few rounds where he had great performances on Entry, picking operators like Jackal, but still even getting the plant off. I can't imagine how difficult it is to not only be the first line of attack for your attacking side, but also to be the guy that needs to go in at the end of the round and put the plant down. And hey, let's not forget on top of all of that, he would be the guy that would be micromanaging the rest of the players throughout the round. Having to face up against some of the best gunners in the world and keep your concentration on that, while at the same time telling your sledge who's still alive to go rotate to the right side for the plant. And on top of that, then knowing that you're going to be the guy that needs to run in and find the safest spot to plant the diffuser. It's unbelievable really how much of a multi-talented player he's shown himself to be. I think his massive amount of experience competing at the highest level allowed him to succeed in this role. If you tried to get a player who was competing in their first LAN event or in their first few months of tier 1 competition, it would be such an overwhelming task for that one player to do all 3 of those roles effectively at one time. And I think we've got to give massive respect to Cameraman for that, And if you're a player that wants to be on a similar role when it comes to IGLing on a flex kind of aggressive role, then I think he is the player to look up to, as he stood up in the last 2 seasons massively for the MIBR and now FaZe squad. I just gotta say, as a bottom line, it's always nice to see these long-standing players at a professional level be able to still keep pace with the young gunners years later. And he definitely showed that with a 10-4 performance against G2, an 8-3 performance against hot-handed BDS, and a massive 14-9 performance against regional competition Team 1. Personally, players like Cameraman are some of my favourite players in the game, as I love to see a player that's mastered all areas of top tier competition. And these type of players can become invaluable, as let's be honest, most players in tier 1 usually lean towards one aspect, whether that be fragging, support, shot calling, whatever it may be. But when you have a player that can do almost everything to a very good standard, they can become such an asset to your team. And similar to players like Bosco and Geo, these type of players are much more likely to have a long-lasting career at tier 1 competition. They can always find themselves a way to fit onto a roster and make themselves a valuable commodity. And finally, for player number 3, the man that we were all hoping would have a big tournament, Beaulo. And every person in the chat saying when does Beaulo play was not disappointed, as he played and turned up massively in almost every single game that they played in the group stage. Similar to JoyStiCK, Beaulo's been one of these players in the first stage of competition this year that's been quite underwhelming considering the talent that we know that they have. But the important thing to remember is that class is permanent, as in the most important time when TSM needed him to show up, he did. And he wasn't just stomping over the smaller teams, as although TSM finished top of the bracket, they did take some big losses to Giants and to Makers. It was actually his performances against their rivals and some bigger teams in the competition that was most impressive, as along with Geo, he was the one that led his team to victory with a big 13-8 performance against SSG and an 11-5 performance against Ninjas in Pyjamas, in a game where we saw him clutch up rounds, get entry kills and just do Beaulo things. Beaulo's the type of player that can be a difference maker for TSM, and when he's on hot form, he is unarguably one of the best players in the world. Even on a bad day, he can usually hold his own. Something that I personally love about Beaulo is that even though he's an aggressive fragging type of player, since he joined Pro League, we've seen him on multiple different roles in different games, whether that be Kaid or Castle or Jackal and IQ. He is definitely not a one-dimensional player like some other great fraggers in the world. And there's nothing wrong with that, but I think when you can play different operators, you make it way harder for your enemies to get a read on your game. And as a bottom line, where we've seen operators like Buck banned out from strong players like Alamau, it becomes near impossible to target ban you, as you can easily just shift onto a different operator and play a similar role or a different one if your team needs you to. I know everybody of course already is, but I think we should be keeping a close eye on Beaulo, as I just feel that he's going to get stronger and stronger as the tournament progresses and will really flourish in those best of 3 games when he has time between each map to talk to Pojo and get some good advice moving on to their next map. And we've already heard him speak about how disappointed he was after a 3rd place finish at last SI, feeling that they could have gone on to take the whole competition themselves. And they definitely have the talent and most importantly the all-round aspects to their gameplay. Every single player on that roster can be a game changer, whether it's Charla clutching, Merc just going uncontested on entry, or Geo and Achieved being those middlemen to win the rounds for them. But Beaulo can't be forgotten, as he's a different type of talent, and honestly if you just go and watch one of his Twitch live streams, you can also see how great the communication is between him and his team. He's not the type of entry player or flex player that is just running around and keeping their mouth shut and not really contributing in that part. It's a team effort from TSM, and we see all of them communicating and helping each other out. And when he's hitting nutty shots like this, he's definitely a player that the opposition need to worry about and can't allow to go unchecked. There it is. Those are my 3 players that I think deserve a shining light when it comes to this group stage of SI. It's just 3 people that I thought I would mention. Doesn't necessarily mean they have the best rating or that they were the most effective necessarily. There's plenty of other players you could talk about, whether it be Pino, Elems, Paulu, Citizen, Alamau, the list goes on. There were so many great players and great performances in this group stage of 6 Invitational, and this was by far worth the wait for this tournament, and they went above and beyond the expectations I think people had coming into it, with so many teams that were underdogs coming and showing that they're not messing around and that they want that hammer just as much as any of the other established teams. Let me know down in the comments what players you thought did really well, what was your favourite play, and what players do you think were kind of disappointing in this group stage and expected more from them. I've got a few I could mention, but I'll leave this to you guys, as this was really about highlighting 3 players that did an excellent job helping their team to the playoffs. If you enjoyed this video, smash that like button, as it really helps get this video out there to a wider audience and grow our channel. And if you're enjoying the recent content on this channel, then please subscribe and come join our little family over here. But most importantly, 100% enjoy the playoffs. I cannot wait to be watching them. This week has just been so incredible for me. I've been losing my shit almost every single day at some of these plays. I just can't wait for it to now be best of threes with the cream of the crop when it comes to international competition that's left. So yeah, enjoy that, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.